there has to be one person. You know, it's kind of like, when I was taking attendance when I was in school. You know, most people say present or something like that. Somebody had to say something a little different. You know? So I guess you wouldn't want to hear the one. Nothing wrong with that. It's good to see everyone here. Rick is in Benton tonight. Haley is in Little Rock, the robotics team. They have their regional competition at Little Rock this 4 days, and so she's there. Izzy's with her, and I plan on going up early Friday morning, spend the night Friday night, staying Saturday, and it's kind of interesting. You know, it's interesting things like that. When I was younger, you know, if you had a team to do something like that, you would probably have almost all boys, at most maybe one girl would be into something like that, and I think the team is it's got maybe one or two more boys than girls, but not many. So what they struggle in is chaperones that are female. So Haley, they were tickled pink when Haley started showing up and participating, so she could be the next person to stay in one of the rooms with all the girls. So pray for her, because she won't get a lot of sleep this week. And so it should be a lot of fun. Sophie wasn't feeling good today, so James is staying home with her, and so I'm the lone Bradshaw here tonight. Anything that is going on that we need to make mention of? Yes.
Well, my brother's about the same. He's still in CCU. They're giving antibiotics still, and they want to get the infection cleared up before they start trying to treat him in any way. And we lost a cousin that was in the other hospital. He passed away yesterday morning. And then I found out a nephew's in the hospital today. So,
Rains it pours, yeah. Now, brother, is he in Cobb? Yeah, that's what
They're both in the same
they're both in
hospital.
the same hospital, but he's been in there for a few days, but we didn't know.
Anyone else? That's one of the, blessings of being in a big family where a lot of people have lived a long time, and you've got a lot of family members, is that you have that, but then the downside is when something, sometimes.
The one that passed away, he was one of 10 children, and then they have one left, one daughter left, one girl left.
So it's the last of his generation.
Yeah, sick one.
Anything else we need to make mention of? I'm going to remind you once more, and of course, best thing that ever happened was cell phones. I use my cell phone for everything, as far as alarm clock and everything. But if you use an old-fashioned alarm clock or a watch or a clock, or whatever, be sure to change your clock. It goes forward 1 hour. I've had bad luck with time changes, and this one I know many years ago, we had moved to Georgia, and it goes forward, so you're late. If you could think you was on time, but you'd be late on this one. So, one fall back. I always tell people, if you don't normally go to Bible class, then just don't worry about changing your clocks. Just show up to church like you would normally think so, and what happens is you show up for Bible class. But for this one, you better pay attention to it. And I know we had moved to Georgia, and decent sized church at the time. I think they ran about 270 or so, and I'd worked my way. I've been there a while enough, paid my dues, and I finally got asked to fill in for a class to teach, and so I was excited about it. And I was prepared. It was going to be college age group kids, and I was excited to do that. And we lived about 30 miles from this congregation, and so we drove, and we got there what we thought was 10-15 minutes early, and I look at the parking lot, and I'm like, wow, this is this is really nice. Normally isn't this full for Bible class? And so I get there and I wasn't even sure, it's a good size, but I wasn't even sure exactly where his class met. And I asked somebody, the deacon that was over the education, I said, where does this class meet? And he just looked at me and grinned. He said, you don't realize what time it is, do you? And I'm like, oh, and as soon as he said it, I realized I forgot to move my clock forward. So, but if you have a cell phone, they do it automatically. So that's nice. It just automatically does it. I don't know how it knows, but it knows. And that's nice. Anything else we need to make mention of? I will make mention again, and I'd like to I think you're supposed to register by the 12th, and so that will be just a few days, really, before next, I guess, by Tuesday. So by Sunday, if you want to go to the River Valley Youth Rally, you need to let me know so we can get that number turned in. They do provide a meal, I think, on the Saturday, and as such, they need to have a decent number to account. And also, they do give people free T-shirts. So, as part of that, they kind of need to know exactly how many. And so, if you're interested, and the gentleman that's speaking is someone that we're very familiar with. He's always been one of the main speakers at CYC. And so if you would like to go, please let us know. And, it's not just for kids, although, obviously it's going to be focused to kids, but there'll be good singing. And the message will be just outstanding as it always is. So if you're interested in going, let me know. Hopefully we have enough that we'll need some people to help drive, but we'll talk more about it on Sunday. Nothing else, let's have a prayer and then we'll begin our class. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you so much for those that are here. We thank you so much for the congregation that meets here and all that we strive to do. Most importantly, we're thankful for your Son, which you sent to die for our sins. We pray that you be with us, that we have an eagerness to learn more about your word. We pray that you be with those on the sick list, especially Sue's brother, and all those others that are on there and are mentioned. We ask that you be with those that are out of town tonight, and may they have safe travels back. We pray that you be with all of us, that we have a spirit and a mind to make sure the church is strong for years to come. Christ, we pray. Tonight we're going to talk about, we just concluded, and the really first big instance. We have seen many times where Saul tried to kill David. But yet last week we talked about the fact that David had opportunity. And yet David allowed Saul to live because he was the Lord's anointed. And he did let Saul know that he had spared his life. And as a result, and he kind of had a heart-to-heart, you might say, from some distance, and a dialogue with him. And it did impact Saul some. Now, it didn't last, but Saul did leave, and at least there was a moment of respite there for David. But what we see, of course, we're going to see that it won't last. But what happens next, I think, is one of my favorite lessons, accounts in the Bible. And it's so many applications can be made, and I think we'll see that. But before we get into, as I've labeled the lesson, the fool with joy, before we get into this fool with joy, something happens. And it's rather monumental. And it's interesting that it's kind of the segue between, David having mercy on Saul, and Saul then leaving, and then this account of this fool with joy. And one verse is all it is, but now, of course, so much of 1 Samuel was devoted to his life. It says, now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him. And they buried him in his house at Ramah. Then David rose and went down to the wilderness of Ben. You would think maybe there'd be more, but how heartbreaking this must have been to the one that recorded this and wrote this down. because Samuel was such a man of God. He tried to warn the people, having a king is not going to go the way he wanted to. But it did. He was one that had his own hardships. His sons did not turn out the way he was. How it must have grieved him as he anointed Saul and what promised as a king, and then for it turned out differently. But it just says he died. It's interesting, and I know in some of the classes I've taken in preaching school and other things, and just to hear from some people, one of the hardest things to do is to break bad news to someone. Is it not? What are the ways that people typically try to break bad news to someone? Huh? In person, but how do they start the dialogue? How do they typically do it?
Well, I say something like, sorry, but I'm gonna have to tell you some bad news.
Yeah, they try to soften the blow, or maybe they gradually delve into it, thinking that actually is a beneficial thing. But what studies have shown, and what just from experience shows, when you have bad news, the best thing to do is just to say what the bad news is. Because as you're trying to, kind of talk around what the bad news is, their mind is already racing to places that's probably worse than maybe what's even going on. And so you notice that it doesn't go into great detail. It just says Samuel died. And I know when, one of the things we really appreciated when Sophie at 8 weeks old was diagnosed, and she had a tumor, and they were 95% sure it was cancer. And what I appreciated, the surgeon, the pediatric surgeon that talked to us when he had us in his office, of course he knew we'd be in disbelief because we even had our other children with us when he was telling us, and it was just oblivious to us, even though the signs were there and everything. We just had no clue that we was going to be getting that type of news. And so when we sat down, the first thing he said, your daughter has a tumor. And he stopped. And we're like, whoa. And the thing is, it took several seconds, if not minutes, for us to process that first part. And then the second part was even worse, but yet he had to start with the tumor first. We believe it may be cancer. That was the next words he said after he saw it, had taken that in. And then we just sit there for a while. And he just let us sit there. And I appreciate that more than anything, because whatever he would have said, if he just started talking right after that, we wouldn't have heard a thing, would we? I know I wouldn't. And so he let us come to the point until we finally started asking him questions, and then he went on to explain things. And I thought that was something that obviously he's done this before and he knew how to do it, but that was a textbook way of how you deal with things that are bad. You go ahead and tell the bad news, but then you allow that person to grieve or process it. Samuel died. I imagine there was great mourning for him. It says all Israel assembled and mourned for him. They probably, can you see the certain generation saying, oh, how good it was in his days. How much better Israel was when we was under the leadership of Samuel. Job named the baby a name that meant fool, or perhaps the events that we have written here were so monumental that it actually adapted or changed what the name may have always been. And so forevermore, this name is going to be fool. Doesn't matter, we don't know, but that's what it means today. In 1 Samuel 25, 2-3, it says, there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel. The man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. Some of that stuff's relative. It sounds like a lot to me. He was rich. He was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail. The woman was discerning and beautiful, but the man was harsh and badly behaved. He was a Calebite. A lot are in these first two verses, or these two verses, 2 and 3. And first of all, from Grand Driver Biggs, and other people will, I think one of the, dictionaries, I think maybe Strong's calls it adult, which we don't use that word a lot, but basically Graham Garver Big says the word means fool. That's just simply what his name, Nabal, means. Once again, we don't know if it meant that maybe before this incident or after, but, we're the origin of it, but we know it means fool. Now, Abigail, this is an interesting one. This was his wife. And it's harsh, and it's mean, and all the bad things you can say about Nabal, the opposite probably can be said about Abigail. Her name means the joy of my father. So, pretty obvious who named her. And, but anyway, the joy of my father. And so Abigail, what a neat name. That's kind of a neat meaning. I didn't think about it when I was naming our girls, but that'd be a good girl's name, would it not? Especially for us dads, the joy of my father. And so, anyway, Abigail. There's some other things that's mentioned here. The man was rich, right? He was wealthy. Now, and it was time to shear his sheep. Now, he had 3,000 sheep. That was a job, wouldn't you say? Now, they didn't have now they use like these, like barbershop, like clipper things that, shear it like lickety split. But, back in that day, I guess it was I guess kind of like scissor things they just sheared, I don't know. And my guess is it took a while, although my guess is if you're skilled in it, you probably could do it fairly quick. But what did they do with the wool? Same thing they do today, they make clothing out of it. And so, in fact, it was probably one of the main sources of clothing for many ways. And, they didn't have need for 3,000 sheep worth of wool for themselves, so what would you do with the wool? Sell it. So that's how he made a lot of his money, I'm sure. That's how he was rich. So what would happen immediately after the sheep was sheared? What would be? It'd be a big event, would it not? We'll talk about that in a moment. Caleb died. Now, there are a couple of different Calebs here, but there's no question which Caleb this was. Which Caleb is this? Who was Caleb? He was a descendant, a son of Caleb. Who was Caleb? He was one of the spies. He most definitely was. He was one of the two that gave favor, him and Joshua. He also, when he did, they possessed land. He's the one that said, I want a mountain, even though he was over at that time. He was one of the two that got to cross over, even though he was of a generation that did not. Numbers 13:6, from the tribe of Judah. Remember, the spies all represent the lunacy that's going to take place. What tribe was David from? Judah. Okay. Now see, this is where some of this sometimes is important. We sometimes read about these tribes and we're just like, oh, they're all these tribes. But these tribes become very important. David was also from the tribe of Judah, and this Nabal would have been distant cousins of some type. Now, don't get me wrong, they wouldn't have been like close neighbors. But I want you to think about something. If I were to, especially not that long ago, but how many of you here have never heard of Bill Clinton? Huh?
Hope, Arkansas.
He was born in Hope. Where did he grow up at? He grew up in Hot Springs. Now, how do you know that? Well, the Arkansas guy, Now, if we asked about another president, we might not know some of those details, would we? But the fact he's from Arkansas, we know those details. Regardless of what you think of him, you know those things because he was from. And the other presidents have been from Arkansas. There haven't been any. So anyway, that's why he's going to be rememberable for no matter what. How many of y'all know who Dale Bumpers was? Yeah. Huh? Charleston, yeah. Now, we're not, most of us, I don't guess anybody here grew up in Charleston. Okay, well, you do have one, so you're excluded from this discussion on this part. But how do we know it then? How do we know it's from Charleston? Well, it's in the news. But how did that make you feel like when he was a political figure in his day? What did you consider him? Someone from our neck of the woods, was he not? I mean, that's what you would think, would it be not? Even though, it's Charleston, I know we have kind of a problem with them, but still, in far as state circles, when someone becomes prominent, that becomes a big deal because a lot of people in our area don't rise to that prominence, do they? And so it becomes something we know who they are. Now, the reason I point this out is David was Saul's lead general, right? David was Saul's son-in-law. David was, without question, the most prominent man from the tribe of Judah during his life. There's no argument to that. So, is it believable? In fact, and then David had this following, where they'd sing, his king killed his tens of thousands and Saul only killed thousands. Is it plausible that someone from the tribe of Judah, someone that would have been distantly related, someone that lived, maybe 20 miles as the crow flies from where David grew up, is it plausible that they wouldn't have heard and known who the real David was? There's just no way. There's just no way he wouldn't know this. So when these things come out, you need to understand that David would have been someone that everyone knew who he was. And so I just wanted to point that out so that we would see this. But anyway, you see some of this, the Maon, you see down there kind of on the south part, wilderness of Ziph, also the wilderness of Paran, that kind of same general area. David had been in the strongholds of En-Gedi at different times, and so you can see Bethlehem up there, and you can kind of see a scale there, 20-ish miles or so from where David grew up in Bethlehem. So anyway, both in the tribe of Judah. Oh, I got a different map here too. You can kind of see how that is. But once again, you can see they're in the southern part. But bear in mind that Israel's not a huge country. In verse 4, David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing sheep. And David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, go up to the Carmel and go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And thus you shall greet him, peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. I hear that you have shears. Now your shepherds have been with us, and we did them no harm. And they are missing nothing all the time they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David. Now, a couple of things we just need to understand. We have grown up in an era where, how can you tell when it's your property and someone else, or your property and someone else's property?
It's surveyed.
Okay, if I'm talking about, farms, say if you got your cattle and other people's cattle, how can you tell your pasture from their pasture? Fence, yeah, we have fences everywhere, do we not? Except for along the Mexican border. We have fences everywhere. We do. We have fences everywhere. And that's good and that's okay. But now, during these days, you didn't have fences. So, the sheep would roam to a certain degree. They were out. And so, David and his men, of course, they were out kind of roaming around as they had been kind of fleeing. And they, in general, did some things that apparently Saul had liked of doing. We saw at the Keilah, they had protected that city when it really should have been the king that had done that. And so here they are, these herdsmen that were out with the sheep. These men helped protect them. They gave them comfort. They didn't give them any hardship. They didn't take anything, didn't steal anything from them. And it was safe and secure for these to be out while they were doing the shearing. Now, David says there was a feast day. How did David know there was a feast day coming? Huh?
You were a Jew, you know that.
Well, this wasn't a feast day in that sense.
Oh, that.
No. Now, bear in mind, I think I forget who I was talking to one day about, I grew up in northern Middle Tennessee, and there they have tobacco. They grow tobacco. And one thing they grow is a thing called dark fired tobacco. And dark fired tobacco is not grown in a lot of places, but when we first moved to Robertson County, Tennessee, we was going to church one day, and my dad's getting ready to preach, and we just moved there, and not that long before, and it's in October, and we're driving to church, and we see these barns and just smoke coming out like crazy. And of course, we didn't have cell phones back in the day, and we get to the church building, and we immediately try to look for someone, and we say, well, we need to, there's some barns on fire, we need to call the fire department, and they just all chuckled. They said, oh, so it's just that time of year. So that's how they cure the dark fired tobacco. They basically hang it up in these big barns, and they put these trash can like container things and fill up with wood, and they set on fire, 2 or 3 of them in a barn, and they let it burn. And so there's smoke, and they actually keep people there all 24 hours a day because guess what? Now the barn does burn down, but there's someone there trying to keep it from actually burning, and that's what we do. Now, I knew some friends in high school did. By the way, it's still to this day mostly manual labor. Now, the problem now is, of course, the government allots you so much land you can grow tobacco, and so these lands are very valuable. If you've got an allotment of land that you can grow a certain amount of tobacco on. And so I had a friend that he bought a car one time. I said, well, what kind of loan did you get? Because, I was looking to get me a car. And he said, oh, well, I said the bank said, they gave me a loan. Basically, we put my dad's land as collateral, and I don't have to pay a dime until the tobacco money comes in, and I'm just going to pay it off. That's how much money back in the day we was talking about. And so that's what he did. And so the banks, they knew that land was of value because this designated how much acreage you can do for tobacco is generational. And so it keeps going. And so the federal government keeps going that. So anyway, it was a lot of money. Of course, now it's too hard work for most of the kids to do it. They have to hire migrant workers to do it now. But anyway, when that time came in, of course, you would harvest your tobacco, you cure it, and then you take it to Springfield, to the big tobacco warehouses, and they would grade your tobacco. And if you got the highest grade, by the way, that was leaf wrapper. And leaf wrapper paid really good. If you had really good tobacco, you got the leaf wrapper, you got the premium dollar. And so they would grade it, and so you get paid based on that. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like stock market. Different months, that value of that price goes up and down, and so you get. But basically, whenever you took it in there, everybody knew that you got a lot of money during that day. Because when you turned that tobacco in, that was a big amount of money. So a lot of people did a lot of celebrations, a lot of buying big purchases, kind of like some people do with their when they get their tax refund. What do you think individuals did when they sheared 1,000 sheep and sold that wool and had all kinds of money? Do you think they was maybe a little excited, a little happy? You think maybe they had a big feast, and that's typically what happened. And so David would have been aware that was the way. What was David's occupation, by the way, before he was shepherd? He was a shepherd. So he knew that when you sheared the sheep, you generally celebrated because you had a time of plenty. And so David asked very graciously, here we protected your men, and we know you've got some, things that come to it. It's time you sheared, and you're going to be celebrating. We just want something. We're hungry, we need, please find favors. Anything wrong with what David asked? Seems rather simple. And it wasn't like with 1,000 sheep, or actually 3,000 sheep, it would have been easy. We're out of time, but it says when David's young men came, they said all this to Nabal in the name of David. And when they waited, Nabal answered David's servants, who is this David? Who is David? Who is the son of that Jesse? There are many servants these days who break away from the master. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've killed from my shears and give it to men who come from I don't know where? So David's young men turned away and came back and told him all this. And David said to his men, every man strapped on his sword, and every man of them strapped on his sword. David also strapped on his sword, and about 400 men went up after David, while 200 remained with the baggage. Now, I just want you to understand how foolish it is. First of all, he knew who David was. for him to deny this, did he not know? He did know who David was. David was the greatest military soldier of his day. And these 600 men had become infamous or famous for their ability to wage war. They had saved the whole city of Keilah. How do you think they would fare against Nabal and his men? And for them to disrespect him and such, what did he expect would happen? And so you can see that this man, if that's what that word meant before Nabal meant foolish or fool, he was really named appropriately because this was about as foolish.
Good evening. How are we this evening? Everybody's good? Nice and warm? It's been kind of chilly. Let's see, I have an update on my stepdad. He's doing okay after his heart surgery. I mean, he's health-wise doing good. He's still having some trouble, processing some thoughts and some different things. So right now they've moved him to senior care, which is still in Baptist Health in the hospital, just a couple floors up, and they're going to work with him on some different things and see if they can't get him out of there. But as far as his health, it's progressing pretty well. No infections or blood clots or anything like that. So that's going well. Thank you for your prayers. Is there any more updates as far as our prayer list or anything that needs to be announced this evening? March the 10th, daylight savings time. That'll be an important thing to remember, March the 10th. And we'll also have a teachers meeting that day. Typically, it's after the morning service. Is that what it's going to be this time? Okay.
It's going to be a dual purpose. It's going to talk about the material from the lads leaders,
Right.
and also we're going to discuss BBS.
Okay, so BBS, teachers, lab leaders, several things going on. Sunday. Okay. Well, that asked Larry Parsons to word our opening prayer, Gene Littleton to word our closing prayer, and I did not just even think about a song leader. Kevin's not here. Is there anyone willing to lead just a couple of songs before Richard's devotional? Any volunteers? Kevin Rice.
Oh, good, Kevin.
Take care of that. Okay. But if we would, go ahead and stand and have our opening prayer, then we'll have a couple of songs before Richard's devotional.
We give you thanks, our Heavenly Father, for this day and for its many blessings. The opportunity we have of meeting here at this place at this time during the middle of the week. Thank you for the encouragement we get one from another and for the extra boost we get for the rest of the week. Thank you for the study of your word that Jim has led us in. Just pray that you continue to watch over us and bless us as you see we have need. Continue to walk with us through this week. Help us to be better disciples. Thank you for each and every opportunity you place before us. And just help us, Heavenly Father, to recognize these opportunities and seize upon them. That much good can be done in your name. Thank you for Jesus and the sacrifice he made for us. Help us to be mindful of those who have been mentioned. Who are sick, suffering, have lost loved ones. Continue to care and look after each one. Continue with us now and forgive us of our sins. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I apologize for overlooking something, but thank you, Kate, for stepping up.
Page 470, Victory in Jesus. Page 470. I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his groaning, of his precious blood atoning. Then I repented of my sins and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about the mansion he has built for me in glory, and I heard about the street of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing, and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. Page 851, I'll Fly Away. Page 851. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I fly away, oh glory, I fly away.
cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by dictatorship. The average age of world's greatest civilizations has been 200 years. These nations have progressed through this sequence. From bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to selfishness, from selfishness to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back again to bondage. Now, you may view that and say that's just someone with a negative point of view. Or you may have sort of followed the sequence there and say, well, I can see some similarities in the history of our country. But whichever you view it, I'll let you entirely decide how you want to view it. So I do want to bring up a couple of things that we might consider, even if you see this as some kind of a foreboding warning. From Proverbs 14, verse 34, we read this short sentence: righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. Common sense tells us that righteousness naturally tends to offset some of the negative things just read from that clipping. It tends to offset selfishness and various other things that might be included there. But remember, even if the majority follows this path that we just read about, and even if this nation is destined to return to a different kind of society, even back to dictatorship and slavery, bondage, remember a few can make a difference. You think of Gideon and his few soldiers. You think of Jonathan and his sword bearer. They tackled a whole Philistine garrison by themselves. And many other things you can think of where a few people have made a difference. I have to intervene with this thought. In our country, I think we have seen a minority make a huge difference in a disappointing direction. They have skillfully used the press and other things to make certain evil things seem good, and made them popular, and many people are following their lead. But remember, a few can make a difference, and especially remember this: God will never forsake his people. Reading from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, says, make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have, for he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor will I ever forsake you. Does that say I will never allow you to be under a dictatorship? Doesn't say that, does it? In fact, when this was written, they were living under a Roman dictator, emperor. Last Saturday we were over at Dayton for a prayer breakfast, and Larry Bridges spoke a little bit, and this sort of fits in. He spent a few moments discussing the fact that the church has survived almost 2,000 years. Now that's been in spite of persecution, false teachers, hostile governments, and he went on with some other description, but you get the picture. The church has survived in spite of many obstacles. Now let's think for a moment about ourselves. If your hope for the future is entirely dependent on the continued stability and prosperity of our country, if your future you feel is entirely dependent on our modern conveniences, modes of transportation, comforts, medical care, and all the other things of our modern society, if you feel that your future is entirely dependent on that, then you may be alarmed of the prospects of what we just read. That the fact is that this country, this democracy may not last forever. If your future hangs on those things, totally and completely, your every hope hangs on these things, then you might lie awake at night after considering what we just read. So if your estimates of success are confined to maintaining this standard of living, this level of prosperity that we have, then you certainly may have some concerns. But if you are willing to commit your life to God, regardless of external circumstances, He will give you strength to be faithful unto death and receive the crown of life. Now, what's really important? Is it my comforts, and I enjoy them as much as anyone here. I like to go home to a warm house, close the doors, and have a sense of security, a warm, comfortable place to sleep, food in the cabinets and the refrigerator. I enjoy that. Anyone here that doesn't like that? We enjoy our comforts. But are those the most important things in life? Rather, be thou faithful unto death and receive a crown of life. We have just a moment left here, so let's read from James. Let's choose Revelation 2. Some of you already know what's going to be said there. If I get on the right page, it'll all come out better. Revelation 2, beginning verse 10. And do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, so that you will be tested. You will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I'll give to you the crown of righteousness. Who knows what our future holds? We may be tested severely, we may live in different conditions. But please remember these two things. God will never forsake you if you remain faithful. Be thou faithful unto death, and you shall receive a crown of life. Simple choice, isn't it? Maybe difficult to execute at times, but a simple choice. But if you have a choice to make tonight about your eternal salvation, your spiritual welfare, if the congregation can be of any assistance at all, would you please stand and while we sing
Page 915.
page 915.
When we walk
We are wise Father, we thank you so much for letting us come here together tonight to hear a portion of your word and to study and contemplate on it. We do pray, Father, that our worship has been acceptable, and we pray that our study has been profitable. We do humbly pray that you would continue to watch over us and care for us and help us to walk the path that you have us to walk. Continue to be with us now